Let's head over to the SEC now, Eli. A 1 p.m. tip-off on Saturday between South Carolina and Arkansas at Bud Walton Arena. Haslametrics has this as the number 89 ranked team in South Carolina against Arkansas, who's at number 115. Which to me, I say, well, what the heck do you want to talk about a couple of potential NIT teams here for? But clearly you see something in this matchup that has piqued your interest.
Yeah, I see this potentially as another buy low opportunity with Arkansas. They closed around 2.5 3-point dogs against A&M on Tuesday night and almost blew that late lead to the Aggies. I don't know why. On the flip side, Buzz Williams called timeout and then didn't pressure the ball against Tremont Mark. Let him waltz up the court, really, with 7 seconds to go.
I imagine that's not what the conversation was in the timeout huddle.
You wouldn't think so, but maybe Wade Taylor IV was just on a high after hitting that ridiculous shot. Honestly, it reminded me a bit of Marcus Page's 3 that went completely unnoticed, because then what happened on the ensuing possession, which won Jay Wright's first national title at Villanova, Chris Jenkins hits the 3 on the iconic play from Archie Diacono. That shot that Wade Taylor hit for the lead for Texas A&M was ridiculous. Like double clutch in double coverage, essentially. I don't know how he got that shot off to begin with, let alone hit it. Just goes to show you how good of a player he is, and kind of speaks to Texas A&M's ceiling if they can reach it, if this team does indeed make the NCAA tournament. But both teams in this game, South Carolina and Arkansas, shooting under 28% from 3. So kind of sticking with the theme of buy low opportunities. Now, South Carolina isn't trying to necessarily shoot the ball a ton from beyond the arc. Arkansas is, maybe not by design. They just have a bunch of chuckers, whether it's Khalif Battle coming over from Temple or Al Ellis from Louisville. You have a lot of three-point shooters, or at least three-point reliant players when it comes to the shots they want to take. Now, you look at South Carolina, fairly efficient transition defense, which comes into play against an Arkansas team that certainly wants to push the pace. Now, I say that with a little bit of jest, just because South Carolina, when they played upper echelon teams like Alabama last week, they struggled. And when you look at their transition defense in particular, lost in blowout fashion to the Crimson Tide, allowed 1.23 points per possession in transition. That's exactly what the Hogs want to do against Michi Johnson and this Gamecocks team that wants to play at a much slower pace. Number 336 in KenPom in regards to their average possession length. So it's going to come down to tempo. Would I expect Arkansas's three-point efficiency to continue to rise like it did against A&M, especially at home at Bud Walton Arena? Yes, but if the Gamecocks slow down the tempo and they're efficient-ish in the half court, keep this more in the lower scoring range, then it could be another loss for Arkansas in kind of crazy fashion, just considering that would be their second loss so far at home, which typically doesn't happen at Bud Walton Arena. But slight edge for me on the Hogs, Steven.
KenPom makes it Arkansas -2. Haslametrics makes it Arkansas -1. The question I have for you is, how concerned are you about South Carolina's ability to create extra possessions here? They are top 40 in the country in offensive rebounding percentage, an area where Arkansas's defense is outside the top 150. Also, South Carolina really doesn't turn the ball over that much. They're around 100th in the nation there. Meanwhile, Arkansas's defense is outside the top 300 in forcing turnovers. That, to me, makes me a little bit nervous in terms of South Carolina being able to potentially generate extra possessions here, or at least, not have as many turnovers against an Arkansas defense that isn't great at turning over their opponents.
Maybe. The one counterpoint that I will say is, well, A, it's a home game, and we've seen home teams dominate in Power 6, Power 7 conferences. Not that that should dictate your bet in this game, but just something to keep in mind, especially when it's this arena. I know Auburn waltzed into, speaking of waltzing, at Bud Walton Arena a couple weeks ago and dominated, and maybe we could talk about the Tigers a bit later because there's a key injury with this Auburn team heading into a massive stretch next week. But on top of that, Arkansas when you look at strength of schedule, ranks in the 30 range, and South Carolina in the 200 range. So my counterpoint to you in that regard is efficiency wise for South Carolina on the glass. Is that going to come to fruition against a much more talented Arkansas team? I say no on the surface, but maybe South Carolina will continue to outperform expectations.
Yeah, it's a fair point with Arkansas because they were not shy in the non-conference games against Stanford, Memphis, North Carolina, Duke, all in a row. Had basically a much easier contest against Furman before another contest against Oklahoma in the non-conference. They went out and challenged themselves in the non-conference. So that might be playing into some of the numbers we are seeing here with Arkansas. So to your point, potentially a buy low spot here for the Razorbacks.